Okay, here to talk about AI and government efficiency, we are joined by Chad Cisco. Chad is the Chief Customer Officer at DataRobot. Chad, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, John, thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
So lay the groundwork for us. I mean, obviously, improving efficiency, that's the kind of a top priority right now in government. But can we get real about this? What are three or four use cases for using data and AI to kind of achieve that aim?
Yeah, John, certainly a lot of pressure to be efficient in government today. And I tell you, we see, to your point, three to four places where agencies are getting value today from AI. And the first one is financial management. So, actually helping with the financial management. There's a couple places within that we've already had a lot of impact with some government agencies. One is just understanding or predicting your contract spend to allow agencies to say, hey, this contract is going to spend under, let's reposition that money to another contract or spend over and pull it back to make sure you're hitting your budget. And then you can just think about actually running the financial management offices, things like matching transactions, invoices, identifying fraud. We're seeing a number of agencies adopt AI tools to do that. And I mentioned fraud, but fraud can go even much better than that. AI is great at picking up on transactions that don't meet rules, anomaly detection. And so we've had both a number of commercial and government customers actually leverage the DataRobot platform for detecting fraud. And we think that could continue. Two other areas just to touch on quickly then: people management or manpower planning, either at the individual level, say a hospital, VA hospital, could be a military hospital. What's the most efficient way to staff that hospital given a forecast of the demand, and making sure you're both delivering a better customer experience but at a lower cost. And then if you step out and say maybe 2 weeks from now, 6 months from now, what's the force structure look like? I'm a former submarine officer. In the submarines, we had a lot of old models to do that in spreadsheets. Now AI can make that much faster and easier for government agencies to predict their manpower and pull the right levers to get the right staff on board. So those are the two biggest areas I think we're already seeing value today from AI.
All right, then let's talk about some of the obstacles to using AI. And let's begin with security. What are some of the security risks that agencies should be aware of when deploying AI?
Yeah. Well, there's the long-standing concern top of mind for most people is just the data breaches. We have a set of secure data, and we want to make sure only the people we desire and the systems we desire access that data. As AI is proliferating, we say, and the number of tools are growing, it's becoming harder and harder to kind of maintain that boundary around your protected data. And then on top of that, the new world of generative AI actually adds a couple additional security risks that agents should be thinking about. First, these large language models are predominantly developed by third parties, civilian industry, or open source. And malicious actors may have purposely mistrained those models to behave incorrectly at just the right time. And so that's a risk to make sure you're thinking about. And then the second one is in the using of those models, maybe you set some guardrails around them to protect what they tell you. And malicious actors can purposely craft prompts that will get around those guardrails. So you're thinking about how's the model trained, and then how is malicious actors interacting with the model. Make sure you have protections on those.
Very devious. So, what are some capabilities or techniques that can help agencies address those risks?
Yeah. So as you think about the security, and I mentioned the proliferation of tools, one of the things we think is the most important is having one central platform that manages and governs all of your AI applications. So you can have a real-time monitoring of every model, look for things like malicious actors, look for unauthorized access. And then, of course, that platform should come with robust role-based access control. So each user only has access to the models and then ultimately the data that user should have access to. And then if you take a step back and say, well, how do we make sure the models we deploy are secure? This platform should also have a sandbox or playground environment where we can run models through tests and try these adversarial attacks, see how they respond. And then once we're sure the model meets our security protocols, then we push that to deployment and monitoring.
All right, so another big issue, of course, is AI governance and ethics as part of that. What are some of the key issues that agencies need to address, in developing their governance strategy?
Yeah, I think the most important thing when we think about governance is done right and thoughtfully. Governance can actually be an accelerator to getting AI out in the wild and maintaining the US lead in AI innovation, right? The OMB recently put out a memo that really asked chief data and AI officers to think about themselves as enablers for using AI, not just managing the risk. And so getting this risk versus innovation speed right is, I think, the big challenge. So if you've thought of these governance risks ahead of time, established your frameworks, you're going to be able to move faster. So some things that framework should include: first and foremost, transparency and explainability. Every AI model, we should understand how do we expect it to respond in a given situation. And then when it does respond in deployment, we want to be able to understand why that AI model. So black box models erode trust. So it's really important you use tools and systems that have explainability. And on top of that, you have to think through the accountability of the AI system. Who ultimately is accountable for releasing it into wild? Who's accountable when it goes wrong? And having that established up front. So when we don't have to ask those questions for each AI model we delivered, we've already thought through. And the last and the most important and the hardest part probably, of course, is what is the ethical alignment and compliance that we as an organization believe in. The AI must align with our societal values. And so it's really important for agencies to think through what is the fairness standards we're going to use? What is the bias mitigation techniques? And then once you've established that, then it's much quicker to put these models into production. And the last thing I would just add on this, one of the things we see many agencies wrestling with is what I'll call shadow AI. It's one thing to establish the governance and establish the security protocols, but then if there's such a myriad of tools and different people are building models in different ways and they're not following your governance, now you've got that risk, even though you've thought through all these things. So really getting kind of wrapping your arms around all the different AI solutions being developed.
So again, kind of what are some capabilities or what are some strategies that can really help agencies with this?
Yeah, again, we think that the most powerful way to think about moving fast with AI is one central platform that all of your key stakeholders have been trained on and understand your guidance and how to use. So pre-deployment, you want this platform to have explainability tools built in, automated documentation. So we build the model, this platform can tell us here's exactly how this model was built and how we expect it to respond under a variety of situations, the ability to audit. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a playground where you can test against different things like toxicity or bias before you deploy. And then once you've deployed, you want a model registry that's keeping track of every model of deployment, what version's under, who approved that version, and then what predictions has it made and why. So you have a full audit trail of everything that's occurred.
All right, one more obstacle, and of course, it's a big one, and that's privacy. How can agencies ensure that their data and privacy, is protected when implementing AI?
Yeah, it's a similar challenge. What we believe is from the beginning, designing privacy into your AI policies. And again, your software platform you're using to build AI, right? You have privacy settings built in for every data set, or particularly even every column of data if it has like PII. Building in automated systems to test for PII leakage, for example, personally identifiable information. So the privacy information, you want to be able to detect that in case someone submitted it and you didn't realize it. And then if I were to step back and say two overarching principles we really encourage agencies to do is first, data minimization. So really just collect and then process the minimum amount of data you need to make this AI system work. And so you want to think through ahead of time, what are we trying to accomplish and what data do we need? And then second, what I might call data sovereignty, which is let's keep the data where it's collected at that agency for that use case and bring your AI platform to the data, one common platform that can work across all of your data stores, whether it be cloud or on-prem. So you're not moving the data to multiple systems and you can kind of lose control of it. So those are the two, I think, big things we would recommend to make data privacy a little easier for organizations.
Excellent. All right, want to shift gears away from obstacles. Let's talk about some cool stuff. Let's talk about agentic AI. First, what the heck is that? And then second, what do agencies need to think about from a governance perspective?
Yeah, so agentic AI is just certainly getting a lot of headlines these days. And what we mean by agentic AI is autonomous AI systems that can make decisions on goals and ultimately adapt to the changing environment, right? With minimum, human intervention, sorry. So unlike generative AI, which we talk about, generative AI really kind of creates content, maybe text or an image or video, whereas agentic AI is focused on taking actions and actually streamlining process and doing steps in an adaptive way. And so some things to make sure you're on the lookout for, I would say, as you're building an agentic AI workflow or system. First and foremost, you have to have clear oversight mechanisms. So some decisions are still just too big for a machine to make. And so we want to have thought through that workflow and what are those decision points where we want to have a human in the loop. If I stick with my financial management examples I said earlier, maybe if we detect big enough fraud, we want a human to say, yes, that is real fraud. Let's send it to the inspector general or an agency. Let's not the AI system and go start an investigation as an example. And then next, you also want to think about the protocols. For example, maybe there's some limitations on the size and scale of things we'll run through the agent workflow. Maybe back to the approving invoices example I said, maybe invoices above $1 million we'll continue to do manually because they're just that much complicated. We're not quite ready to trust our agents yet. And then last, this is a theme I talked about earlier, becomes even more important in agentic workflows, is the transparency and auditability. Really having a deep understanding is how is the agent going to react in every situation and logging it for every decision it makes and able to go back and say, well, why did the agent do this here? What was the prompt? What were the indications? So you can, maintain that continuous audit trail.
Okay, great. So final question. How does DataRobot help with all of this? What do you guys do here?
Yeah, so DataRobot is really first off, if I step back, DataRobot has been AI from the beginning. We started as somewhat of an automated ML platform in the mid 2012-ish range, and we've been just adding, following the wave of change of AI over the years. So ML initially, then generative. We added a number of generative AI capabilities to our platform, and now with agentic. And so we really see ourselves as somewhat of this AI application operating system. We can work across any infrastructure, whether it's a major cloud provider, on-prem, and some of these even GPU clouds now. And we can bring all that together. We have a deep partnership with NVIDIA, for example, to help customers get value out of their GPUs if they don't have software to do it. And then we can build AI applications on top of that platform to do all the things I talked about earlier. Make sure they're built in a safe way, make sure they're governed properly with right audit trails. And then we have deep partnerships with a number of SIs and other organizations to build applications on the top of the platform to get to scale.
Okay, great. Well, we are out of time, but Chad, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, great. Thank you.